In this second outcome, we turn to the times when markets get it wrong, when leaving things to the free market ends up wasting the very resources it's meant to allocate well. Market failure is simply what happens when a free market, left to its own devices, doesn't allocate resources efficiently, making too much of some things and too little of others. Sometimes it's complete. The market provides nothing at all, as with street lighting that no firm could charge you for. More often, it's partial. The good exists, but in the wrong amount. Think of the excess pollution factories pump out or the shortfall in preventative health care. This is the central reason governments step into markets in the first place. To see why some things get underprovided, we need to separate private goods from public ones. A private good, like a sandwich, is rival and excludable. If I eat it, you can't, and the shop can simply refuse anyone who won't pay. A public good, like national defense or street lighting, is the opposite. My using it doesn't reduce yours, and nobody can be shut out. That creates the free rider problem. Why pay when you'll get the benefit anyway? And it's precisely why firms can't profitably supply these goods. Let's stay with that free rider problem because it's the crux. Since a public good is non-excludable, a firm simply can't charge for it, so there's no way to turn a profit, and everyone happily waits for someone else to foot the bill. Flood defenses are the classic case. A seawall protects every household in the town, whether or not they chip in. Left to the market, we'd get too little or none at all, which is why the government funds these things out of taxation. Some goods get misconsumed not because of who pays, but because we misjudge them. A merit good, like education or vaccination, is better for us and for society than we tend to realize, so the free market underconsumes it. A demerit good, such as tobacco or alcohol, is worse for us than we admit, so we overconsume it. Underneath both cites information failure. We simply don't weigh the true costs and benefits, and so we make poor choices. Now, we reach one of the most important ideas in the whole outcome: externalities, the spillover costs and benefits that land on people outside the deal. A negative externality is a cost dumped on others, the pollution from a factory or the fumes of a traffic jam. A positive externality is a benefit others enjoy for free, like a vaccinated population or even a neighbor's beautifully kept garden. Because the market ignores these side effects, it overproduces the harmful goods and underproduces the beneficial ones. This graph shows why pollution gets overproduced. The marginal social cost line sits above the marginal private cost line because production is quietly harming third parties on top of the firm's own bill. Left alone, the market lands at a quantity out beyond the social optimum, so the good is overmade and overconsumed. That shaded triangle between the two is the welfare loss to society, and a coal plant belching emissions over a whole region is exactly the picture. Flip it over, and here's the mirror image for a beneficial good. The marginal social benefit line sits above the marginal private benefit line because people beyond the buyer gain too. So the free market settles at a quantity short of the social optimum, and the good is underproduced. University education and healthcare are the standard examples. That gap is the argument for subsidies or state provision to nudge output up towards where society would want it. Let's ground externalities in a real case. Picture a chemical factory on a riverbank that quietly discharges waste into the water. The firm's private costs are just wages, materials, and energy. But the true social cost adds the ruined fishing, the lost tourism, and the misery for residents downstream. Because the firm ignores that external cost, it churns out more than is good for society, a textbook negative production externality. And that's exactly why the Environment Agency regulates discharges and can hit polluters with fines. Now, a positive externality in action. When you decide whether to pay for a flu jab, you naturally weigh your own private benefit, being less likely to fall ill. But there's a bigger social benefit you probably don't count. Fewer people around you catch it either. That's herd immunity. Because each of us weighs only our own gain, too few of us get vaccinated. That's the reasoning behind the NHS offering free flu vaccines to key groups to lift take-up towards what society really needs. So, if markets fail, what can a government actually do about it? It has a toolkit. It can put indirect taxes on goods that harm others, hand out subsidies to encourage the beneficial ones, or reach for regulation, rules, bans, and standards. On top of that, it can provide goods directly or run information campaigns. The thread tying them together is the aim of making private costs and benefits reflect the true costs and benefits to society, what economists call internalizing the externality. Let's look at how an indirect tax works. Something like fuel or tobacco duty. It raises firms' costs, which shifts the supply curve up and to the left, so the price rises and quantity falls back towards the social optimum. In effect, the tax internalizes the external cost. The polluter now pays for the harm. The catch is that it works best where demand is inelastic. But that same inelasticity means quantity doesn't fall by all that much. Exactly the story with petrol. A subsidy is the tax in reverse, a payment to producers that lowers their costs and shifts supply down and to the right. Price falls, quantity rises, and output climbs towards the social optimum, which is just what we want for goods with positive externalities. Britain uses these for public transport, renewable energy, and apprenticeships. The trade-off is that the taxpayer foots the bill, and every pound spent here is a pound not spent elsewhere, a real opportunity cost. Here are the tools side by side with real British examples. An indirect tax, like fuel duty or the sugar levy on soft drinks, raises price and cuts output. A subsidy for public transport or renewables does the opposite. Regulation sets hard rules, clean air zones, the smoking ban, minimum age laws. State provision means the government supplies the good directly, as with the NHS, state schools, and flood defences. And information, like calorie labels on menus, tackles the failure at its root by helping us choose better. The soft drinks industry levy, brought in back in 2018, is a lovely worked example. Sugary drinks carry external costs, obesity, tooth decay, and pressure on the NHS, so the levy taxed them by their sugar content. It did push prices up, but the really striking effect was that many producers quietly reformulated their recipes with less sugar to dodge the tax. So the sugar in soft drinks dropped noticeably, showing a tax can correct failure both by curbing demand and by changing what firms make. Critics do point out it's regressive though, taking a bigger bite from poorer households. Is taxing externalities a good idea? Let's weigh it up. In its favor, a tax makes the polluter pay, raises revenue that can fund cleanups or healthcare, and keeps up a standing incentive to pollute less. Against it, there's the sheer difficulty of pricing the externality correctly, the fact that these taxes hit low-income households hardest, and the risk that if demand is very inelastic, output barely falls, while smuggling and black markets spring up. Exactly what's been seen with high tobacco duties. Here's the twist worth remembering. Intervention can backfire. Government failure is when a policy meant to fix a market ends up leaving resources worse allocated than before. The causes are varied. Governments can't measure externalities precisely, so a tax or subsidy is set at the wrong level. Policies throw up unintended consequences, like the black markets we just mentioned. And there are administrative costs, red tape, and the pull of lobbying and political self-interest bending decisions out of shape. A few examples bring this to life. Set tobacco duty very high, and you can fuel smuggling and illegal sales that undercut the whole point of the policy. Subsidies can be captured by producers and end up propping up inefficient firms that should have folded. And price controls, like caps on rents, often trigger shortages and a slide in quality. Landlords simply supply less. The judgment to reach is that intervention is frequently justified, but it has to be well-designed, well-informed, and regularly reviewed, or it adds to the very inefficiency it's set out to cure. Let's pull this outcome together. Market failure is a misallocation of resources, either complete, with no provision at all, or partial, in the wrong quantity. We met the key pairs, public versus private goods, merit versus demerit goods, and positive versus negative externalities, and saw how that gap between private and social costs drives over or underproduction. Governments respond with taxes, subsidies, regulation, state provision, and information. But intervention can itself misfire, so the mark of good analysis is weighing both sides and reaching a judgment. That wraps up Learning Outcome 2, where we've seen how markets can misallocate resources through public goods, externalities, and information failures, and how governments try, and sometimes fail, to put things right. To take it further, the reading list offers the standard texts by Sloman and Mankiw for the theory, while sources like the Office for National Statistics and the Treasury's reports on the sugar levy and fuel duty show the policies in real numbers. The Competition and Markets Authority case studies are a great way to see intervention tested in practice. Dip into whatever interests you most, and remember, the ebooks and journals for this unit are all on the Moodle.